Hello. Thank you so much for being here. This is really exciting. This is the culmination of our Copy Bank challenge. Now, I know it's a cliche in 2022 to ask if you can see me and hear me on a video call, but as this is my very first time live streaming from YouTube into our challenge platform, I'm genuinely curious if you can see me and hear me. So will you let me know if you're watching this live? Um, Now, as you may have noticed, I am a little under the weather. So this live is brought to you by Puffs Plus with lotion and peppermint tea. There's a bug that's been making its way through our household and it has reached me. So I'm going to change up our plan just a bit today. I'm still going to get to your questions. Those that have been sent in ahead of time and any that you share on the call. And then instead of moving into what I had planned to do, which was kind of a show and tell of what to expect after the challenge wraps up, what I'm going to do is give you a preview of what's coming, and then I'll follow up over email and give you all the details there. Let's see. Megan says, just now able to hear and see you. Okay. There might be a lag there, Megan, but thanks for letting me know. I appreciate it. New frontiers of technology. So we're just going with it. If there's any interruption, just pop it into the chat and I'll do my best to troubleshoot. But the main thing I want to get into since we're here live is to address your questions. Now, I know questions have come up under each of the day's lessons inside the challenge, and I'll share more in a moment, but you'll have that space for the next week to continue to ask questions, and I'll still be in there supporting you through it. So if there's anything specific to content in, like, say on day 2, if you have a question specific to something I've shared in that lesson, you're welcome to drop it there and I will answer it for you there if that's easier. But some of the questions that have come through are specific to using your copy bank. Others are more general questions about writing and maybe how the copy bank fits into that. So if you have any questions, just pop them into the chat. Otherwise, I'll just pull up the ones that I've gotten so far. Okay. So let's see. So Pia wrote to me, she emailed hers in. She said, "Hi, Michaela, I'm working on updating my professional directory listing, and I'm wondering what helps set some apart from all the others on there. Anything you see that's working well right now." So I don't know if Pia, I'm not sure what kind of work that she does. And so I don't want to assume which specific type of directory listing she's talking about, but I can speak to some generalities I've seen among some of the more popular ones. So a lot of folks that I work with are therapists who have professional presence on therapy listings. So things like Psychology Today, Therapy Den, there are a whole bunch of them. That's one option. Other folks I work with, health coaches and other kinds of professionals might have a health profs profile. Regardless of where you're showing up, most of them have some of the same key functions within them. And I think while there is some core guidance that holds true no matter what kind of work you do and where you're showing up. And if you'd like to dig into I've shared a lot about that already. And so if you check my YouTube channel and my blog and search directory listing or professional profile, that should come up. I've shared quite a bit about that kind of time-tested advice that's just going to help you stand out, honestly, no matter what online platform you're on, but specific to those directories for sure. But thinking about what's working well right now, what I'm seeing is that it stands out in a really helpful way if the person behind their listing has taken the time to get to know how familiar the help seeker is with actually the help that they're offering. So what I mean by that is, rather than trying to speak to people that are just getting started, people that have been at it for a really long time, people that are somewhere in the middle, they'll tailor the language of their listing to fit that place along the journey. Or if you know that you want to work with people who fall all along different places of that journey, to say that as well, like to find ways of acknowledging whether you're just getting started or whether you're coming back to therapy, we'll just say, after a break, dot, dot, dot. I think this is kind of an unspoken qualifier that many folks are using when they're searching, is like, is this someone who works with true beginners? Like what I'm hearing a lot of on the client side is a lot of uncertainty and maybe even a little embarrassment about questions that they might have that they think are too like stupid questions or too beginner. And so I think just really normalizing that. And if you particularly enjoy working with people that are brand new to whatever kind of help you offer, calling that out and really making that a part of your positioning. I think right now, especially when there's just so many different profiles online, I think that will help you stand out. I also think, I mean, video is not new, but I think people who are not just including some kind of video presence on their listings, but actually applying some of the best practices we're seeing on like social media platforms, for example. So pulling in strategies and different tips that you might be using if you're posting on Instagram, for example, like what makes for an engaging story or reel or whatever there, you can use that same. I mean, of course, you're taking a different approach. You're not like joking the entire time, but using the same kinds of strategies to keep it engaging, I think is really, people expect that from video content now. And so I think that will help set you apart. That's also just further reinforcing the idea that that your profile is an active presence, that you are revisiting it and continuing to update it as you go, and that's always a good thing. And then finally, I think what helps profiles stand out in a positive way right now is evidence that you have anticipated what comes next. So I'm always a little surprised when I see a profile that clearly has thought put into the written narrative, and has a great picture, and clearly the person behind it cared enough to take time with it. But then there's really not much of a next step outlined. So it might be, email me for availability, or you can visit my website, or you can call. I think just really smoothing the path as much as possible. So if you know, like, you get to decide what you want that actual bridge to connecting with you to look like. And if you know, like, yes, I have a phone number, but I'm really set up to do a great kind of warm reception over email, then tell people that that's the way you want them to contact you. Make sure that when they do reach out, however they reach out, there's some kind of a thoughtful process that you've prepared to meet them there. That's just going to help you stand out no matter where you're showing up, but for sure on these directory listings where they can look so similar, it's going to help you stand out when you show, like, this is just the beginning. I've put a whole lot of thought into the journey you're going to be on working with me. So I hope that's helpful, Pia. Let me know, of course, if you have any follow-up questions. Let's see. Jill posted, she has to miss the live, but she shared some questions here. Do you recommend starting with the copy bank every time, or can we add copy from old projects into our bank first? So I've said, like on day 3 in particular, I've said, get in the habit of having your copy bank up and out all the time. Like, get in the habit of really using it no matter what you're working on. But for sure, if you have, so I don't know what old project Jill has in mind, but if you, let's say, just got through sharing a new offer, you could take any piece that you've already written and add it into your copy bank for you to use going forward. And I would say do that whether it was a wildly successful offer that you are going to plan to continue offering or will offer again in the future, or even if it was like, if you're discontinuing it or something, I would add it then to your copy bank still, because you never know when you're going to want to repurpose that potentially. So a couple of places that might make sense is, to create a dedicated space in your copy bank for your offers, for your programs and services, products, whatever you're selling. You could add it there. You could add it to your copy graveyard if you know that that's not something that you're going to be using right away, but you don't want to lose track of it. And also, I would just remind you, if it seems daunting to go through and like excavate a project for nuggets and then find where to plug them into your copy bank, you can always use your virtual filing cabinet, right? You can just pick the category in your copy bank that's relevant on that board and link documents. That is a perfectly legitimate way to store things, and I do that all the time. And then I know, well, later I can always go back and pull from it if that's helpful. Okay, Jill also asks, is there a tool you use to store screenshots before you move them to your copy bank? No. I have just gotten in the habit of moving screenshots from my camera roll over to my copy bank weekly. Otherwise, they just build up and it becomes too daunting. I know some of my clients like to use Evernote for this. They'll kind of corral everything in the Evernote app, and they like that. In fact, I worked with a client not long ago who had already like a pretty robust copy bank. It was just living in Evernote, which is perfectly fine. We ended up moving it over to Asana because that's what she was using with her team. But you can use whatever it works best for you. But yeah, it would be very handy if there was a specific tool designed to move things from all over the internet that you're collecting and dump them into your copy bank. Stay tuned. Finally, Jill asked, should we include content inside the copy bank or make a separate content bank for that? Thank you again for this. You're welcome, Jill. So, Jill, I'm not sure if it sounds like maybe you're wondering about content like that you'd share, like your free content. So maybe not necessarily copy that would be used on your website or in your email marketing, but like blog posts or social media captions. Jill, just get in touch with me if I'm misunderstanding your question, but if that's what you're referring to, it's totally okay to include that in your copy bank. In fact, I'd recommend it. If you have just a completely different structure for, say, a content calendar, and it doesn't make sense, to, like, for you, if I always ask, like, what is the least friction option? Like, if it's going to create new headaches for you to merge these two banks, your content bank and your copy bank, then leave them separate. That's totally fine. For me, I keep everything under one heading. Again, I started in Trello and I've since moved mine over to Asana. And the reason I like that is because I already use Asana to manage my calendar. And so it's very easy for me to pull content from my copy bank and schedule it out all in the same tool. But, sometimes copy content, they're used interchangeably in many ways. They're not exactly the same thing, but when we're talking about a copy bank, it's really just any piece of your written communication that can be used in your business. And so I say leave them all together. But if other people have ideas about how they're using this or how they intend to handle their content inside their copy bank, just please let me know. Let's see. Kieran says you can actually post photo screenshots into a Trello board. Yeah, it's pretty great. Trello, obviously, everyone has their own preferences for which tools are their favorite. Trello, for being free, is pretty great in terms of the flexibility that it offers you. You can add a lot there. I also I've worked with some people who make use of the checklists inside Trello. And so sometimes as you're going through, this can be helpful as you're building out your copy bank. So let's just say as you're making your way through the end of the copy bank challenge, you realize, okay, I'm starting here, like Michaela's saying to do, but I've got like 17 ideas for what else I can add to this category. You can with one click, just create a checklist, like a little to-do list inside that card in Trello. And then later, that's a mental trigger to you to go back and fill that in. So I like that it's both a storage place and also kind of a to-do list. There's very, very elaborate project management tools out there. Trello's pretty light, but I like it for that reason because it offers you both the capabilities of storing things in different ways without being like a whole extra headache. So I'm glad this is a new to you tool and that you're liking it so far. Other questions? I have more I can work through, but if you have questions as you're watching this, please just pop them into the chat. Okay, let's see. So Kelly had a question about writing more broadly, although I do think like all questions can kind of come back to the copy bank and I'll always find a way. But I do want to address these because I think it's a really good question. Kelly asks, how do you ensure your writing does not seem repetitive or confusing to the reader? What formulas or steps would be potentially helpful? Similar to when we learned the process of writing in school with the format being intro, and hook, purpose, importance, thesis, supporting paragraphs, conclusion with summary statement. Hope this makes sense. Yeah, Kelly, it makes perfect sense. And I love this question. Yeah, we want a blueprint. we want a template, right? So what I can do is speak to this broadly. Kelly, I followed up inside the challenge and just posted a reply to your question asking if there was a particular type of writing. Excuse me, just one. Asking if there was a particular type of writing you had in mind with your question, like a blog post or a social media caption or an email or whatever, because I do have some specific advice I can offer for each of those types. But generally speaking, yes, I do think there's some best practices that when taken into account will always help guard against confusion and repetition. Repetition, by the way, is not inherently a bad thing, but I understand like the connotation in the context of Kelly's question. I think she means like repetitive, like, oh my gosh, you're just beating the same drum over and over again. So we want to avoid that experience for your reader. And we also want to experience confusion, of course. I'm just going to pause here before I answer. Megan says, yes, loving Trello and how you set everything up for us. Oh, I'm so glad. This is the first time I'm sharing this in this way. So that makes me really happy. I've been using and sharing the copy bank, like some version of it for a long, long time. This is the first time I've ever hosted like sharing the template more broadly and walking you through it in this way. So that feedback means a lot to me. Thank you. Okay, so Kelly, writing. I'm going to give you a really simple, and you may have heard a version of this before, but then I'll kind of unpack it a bit as it relates to your writing and the concerns you're asking about specifically. It is a 3-part prompt, and that is know, feel, do. So ask yourself every single time you're writing something new for your business, by the time someone is done engaging with this thing I've written, what do I want them to know? How do I want them to feel? And what do I want them to do? And that's not like, it doesn't have to go in that order, but those are the 3: know, feel, do. I keep it on a little Post-it on my desk always as just a mental trigger to me when I'm writing. Because what it's going to do is help. It's going to help in a few different ways. First, by asking, what do I want someone to know when they're done interacting with this piece of content? It forces you to have a point. And Kelly, I know I can tell from the way you've asked your question, you're a skilled writer. You all have amazing communication abilities, but anyone can lose the plot of their own writing. Amen? So by asking yourself, like, what is the main takeaway from this thing that I'm writing? And I find it helpful to ground this in an example. So we can think about, let's make it really, really easy to wrap our heads around. Let's think about an Instagram caption. There should be a main takeaway from that caption. Now, maybe the actual content of it is a really simple, like one tip you want to share, or maybe it's 3 reminders that you want to share, or maybe it's one reflection of one truth that you want to reveal. whatever the actual spirit of the caption is, start by getting really clear on what is the point? What's the so what once you peel away all the context around this? Then working backwards, you can help structure it. You can create kind of a basic structure for yourself. And that's where this does kind of differ depending on what the format of the writing is. But back to your question, Kelly, about, in school, starting with an intro and hook, I think that's best practice no matter what you're writing. So whether you're writing an email or a blog post or an Instagram caption, I do believe you should have some kind of a hook at the beginning. So you can get quite literal with this. For example, I usually capitalize mine and make it read like a little heading. That's just the way my mind works. Um, in a blog post, that's how I treat the title of the blog post. And then the hook is kind of the first line or two of the blog post. In an email, that's your subject line. And then the hook is, well, that's your hook. And then the first couple of lines of the email. So that is going to help get everyone get their attention, but it also primes them for the content. It's like a skimming tool. It aids in moving their way through whatever is to come next more easily. They kind of have a heads up about what's to come. Okay. So that's know. What do I want them to know? How do I want them to feel? Taps into one of your greatest superpowers, empathy. Putting yourself in the shoes of the person on the other side of the screen, no matter what the content is that they're engaging with, it it helps to ask yourself, what are they likely feeling right now around this topic? And you're not a mind reader, so of course you can't know for sure, but you can make an educated guess based on what you know about your audience. How are they feeling as it relates to the topic that you're writing about? How do I want them to feel when they're done here? And you might have to sit with this one for a minute to get as specific as possible. So, you know, I think I think most people would say better. I want to leave them in better condition than I found them. But see if you can put a tighter label on that. Do you want them to feel uplifted? Do you want them to feel convicted? Do you want them to feel challenged? You know, like lovingly called out or called in? How do you want them to feel? That is going to help you make adjustments to the actual wording. It's going to help you, if you think about a sound mixing board, it's going to help you move those sliders in different directions to strike just the right tone that you're going for. And so in bringing it back to the copy bank, in the very beginning of the copy bank, we have our section on brand voice and tone. There, I've linked a blog post there that can help you get clear on those definitions. But really, your brand voice is like a thread that goes through everything that you write. That shouldn't change. You shouldn't show up as a wildly different personality from one post to the next, because we want to build trust and credibility with our people. But tone can vary quite a bit. So for me, for example, there are times where I take a more direct approach if I'm maybe shining a light on some BS status quo in the field. I'm going to take a different tone than I am in something more lighthearted, say. But it doesn't mean that I become like a tough love brand voice kind of person. I'm never going to be like a Dr. Phil, how's that working out for you kind of person. I just bring a slightly different tone. But anyway, the way I get to all of that is by asking that question. How do I want them to feel when they're engaging with this? And the last piece is, what do I want them to do? And this, of course, is going to point right to your call to action. Call to action is just simply an invitation to take the next step towards something helpful. So back to our Instagram caption, for example, that might be dropping a comment or question below. That might be popping over to another part of the app to engage with you there. That might be clicking the link in your bio or tagging a friend or whatever, saving the post. On your website, your call to action might be something a little more comprehensive, like navigate over to the contact me button to schedule a free consultation. But by having a sense of what you actually want them to do, that is going to help you land somewhere. It's kind of like the ending. That's a really common question I hear from people with their blog contents and also their their social media posts. It's like, how do I wrap it up at the end? Email, we don't struggle with this quite so much because we can sign off, sign our name. But other kinds of content, it can be hard to know like how to get off the stage. You're kind of doing the Homer Simpson into the hedge meme, right? So what can be really helpful is to end with a clear call to action. So you can set that off with an emoji if you're on Instagram. I always put it in a PS. I actually do that in all my emails as well. I almost always include a PS. It's just a really easy way to set that off. Like, okay, here's what to do next. I'm curious, folks who are on the call, how do you do these kinds of things? How do you organize the structure of what you're writing? Kelly, I know you're asking about writing more broadly. And so if you have follow-up questions based on this, please let me know. As I said, there are formats and structures that I think really lend themselves to effective writing in each of these domains. It's just hard to speak. It's hard to know which one to speak to without knowing which one you have in mind. But yes, generally speaking, one of my most fundamental pieces of guidance is know, feel, and do. For everything you write, what do I want the person reading this to know? How do I want them to feel? And what do I want them to do? Let's see. Jeff says, I'm a generalist, teens to adults, all sorts of problems, multiple modalities, struggling to have a front door that focuses when everyone seems to be looking for a specialist. So are you thinking specifically of like your online, like a professional profile, Jeff? Or are you thinking about your website? What do you say more? Because I think there's probably some other generalists in here too. Let me know what you think. While he's answering that, something that comes to mind for me is we don't have to, let's just say we're on Jeff's website. It doesn't have to be the same story on every single page. So for example, yes, website will be the first thing. Yeah, great priority. So with a website, when we think about the house metaphor, the home page is our front door, right? But in reality, not everyone comes through the front door. Sometimes they're coming through like the garage door where they have to walk past all the shoes. Sometimes they're coming through an open window or something. I don't know what kind of fun house I'm talking about here, but on your website, we can't control how people navigate to the actual information there. It would be great if they followed the same, like the very logical progression that we have in mind when we set up our website. But what we need to do is prepare for the inevitability that they're going to get there some other way. So let's talk about some practical ways they could get there. They could come to a landing page that you have set up. So, for example, when you first found this copy bank challenge, you might have found it through a button on my homepage, or maybe you were sent there from social media or from a speaking event that I was part of. I set up lots of different ways for people to make their way into this challenge that did not involve you coming through my front door of my website. And so one thing to keep in mind is you can tailor that page with every one of those entry points. You can tailor it to a specialty if you want. So your homepage might speak to the fact that you're a generalist, but if you're trying to speak to certain subgroups within that generalist practice, and those subgroups are looking for someone who specializes, you can tailor it in those different ways. So it might be one free opt-in, some kind of a free thing that you're giving away in order to invite someone onto your email list, Jeff. You can tailor that to a particular subgroup that you're speaking to. You can have an information page. This is a really great way and a fairly simple way that people can invite different specialty groups onto their website, is to write a long form, still engaging, but very informative, keyword rich page about a topic relevant to that subgroup. That is going to help send all the good signals to the Google machine that you and your site are a trustworthy source of information on that topic. That's going to pull people in through that door without making them go through the homepage front door that might make you look like more of a generalist. Of course, as always, we want to make sure that our online presence is a genuine reflection of our real life practice. And so if you don't want to specialize in these things, I think there are ways to own your generalist identity and work with that. There's always a way to specialize your business and your practice. It doesn't necessarily have to mean narrowing the field of who you're speaking to. You can specialize by being very clear about your values or very clear about certain characteristics about how you work. There are lots of different options. So happy to chat with you more about that, Jeff. Let's see. Megan sees couples. You want them to feel hopeful after they visit my website. How can I communicate that there is hope? Everything I say sounds cheesy. Yeah, dang it. Isn't that frustrating? When you're like, no, but it's true though. I know everyone says this, but it's really true. There is hope. So I'd love to crowdsource this here. We've got smart people on the call. If other people have ideas for Megan about how to convey hope without, I don't want to assume like what you've tried to say, Megan, but let's just say, for example, there is hope, right? That might seem cheesy just because it's so many people say it. What are some creative ways you can convey that? Megan, sometimes what's helpful to me is to flip the script and put myself on the other side of the screen um, as the therapy seeker, as the help seeker. What would instill hope in me? Is it going to be this therapist who maybe I've been following for a while, or maybe I just met on her site telling me there's hope? Or is there something else that might inspire hope in me? What's true for you? What would make you feel hopeful when you land on someone's site? I'm gonna punt it back over to you, and then I'll share some ideas. Jeff says, yes, that's what I'm thinking about, is doing short pieces on specific issues. Yeah, I think that's a great idea, Jeff. Regarding the word short, I would encourage you to do a little bit of exploration, if you haven't already, into SEO best practices in 2022, because specialty pages or pages dedicated to a particular topic, there's a strong case to be made for going a little longer on those, just to make sure that you're giving Google enough information to flag your site as a credible source of information on that topic. So just right off the top of my head, one way to approach this, let's bring it back to the copy bank. Let's say you create a board in your copy bank that's specific to these specialty pages you'll be doing. You gave the example, what is trauma? So at the top of your board in your copy bank, I would say trauma specialty page. And then for part of your research, and you can use some of the strategies we talked about on day 2, go to the online forums that are speaking to you most, and try to identify popular questions. Like, what questions are people actively searching right now, real humans, about trauma? And they might be questions that you can already think of. Go ahead and add those to your copy bank. But there might be some that surprise you. Remember how surprised I was by some of what I was finding on the stepmom forums that I was looking up? We can't always anticipate what people are actively asking about. So I'd encourage you to go through, find some new questions, add them there, and then those become the subheadings on your specialty page on your website. So what is trauma is a great, that's a great kind of foundational question for your page. But let's say someone asks a question about like, what counts as a traumatic event. Let's just say that's one question people are asking. You do a section answering that. And something else that you can add to your copy bank, I'm just loading you up with to-dos today, Jeff. Aren't you so glad you came? I would be looking around, and as you're finding other pages online, because likely in your search, you'll discover other websites that have pages about trauma, take a look at what they've covered and ask yourself, what's missing here? What's an unanswered question that I can add to my page to make it even more helpful? And that's for anyone that's feeling kind of twitchy about SEO, I'm not an SEO expert, but I make it my business to educate myself and work through resources created by people who are experts. And what I've learned happily is that whereas in the past there was like keyword stuffing and all kinds of goofy practices that we had to do to like outsmart the bots online, the trend really is toward user experience and SEO richness being closely aligned. In other words, Google wants our websites to be as useful to the people landing there as possible. That's great. That's what we want to. And so bringing it back to that question of how can I make this a really rich, helpful user experience on my site? And I know that's what you want, Jeff, but sometimes, especially when we've got 17 different things to do, it can feel like, okay, I just have to write a specialty page. How long does it have to be? Okay, that's good enough. Ask yourself, and as you're creating your copy bank, really try to take some time to come up with some thoughtful questions. What all can I include here? Okay, let's see. Jeff says, yes, that's what I'm thinking about, is doing short pieces on specific. Okay, all right. Let's see. Have already subscribed to Uber Suggest. Yeah. Yeah. And that's a whole juggernaut of information there in search power. So please let me know what you think once you've had some time to play around with it, Jeff. Let's see. Smadar. How am I pronouncing your name correctly? I don't want to butcher anyone's name. I'm wondering if you could address how to manage being a non-disclosing therapist, online and in person, with writing copy that allows new clients to feel like I get them and reach out for a consultation. So, Smadar, that's close enough. Okay. I would love to know, can you share a little bit more? I appreciate the irony of asking you to disclose more about what it means to be a non-disclosing therapist. Can you tell me a little bit more about the tension you're feeling between those two things? I think that'll help me offer some guidance. Megan, I've tried statistics showing how couples therapy can help, but it does not give me that hopeful feeling. Yeah, it gives you that stats feeling, right? I think it would give me hope to know that other couples improved. Yeah. Um, yeah, I think that would give me hope too. And it does raise some interesting questions about how we can apply general guidance that's out there, like general copywriting guidance, to a therapy practice, because there are limitations around what you can share. Like, so for example, in a different field, my suggestion might be, oh, take testimonials. Like what could be better social proof than a video of someone saying what a great experience they had working with you? Well, we're limited. Again, I don't want to make assumptions about who all is here and what kind of work you do and different governing bodies. That's your joy and responsibility to keep on top of that. But I think you're well within your rights and your scope, Megan, to craft some copy that in a very conversational way communicates like, hey, the people that work with me, it works. Like the people who work with me feel better. That is not like compelling copy, what I've just said, but you know best like which key pieces are going to speak to the people you're trying to reach. So one way to do this pretty simply with your copy is to do a little bit of future pacing. So this is when you prompt the person on your site to think about like this alternate universe pitched however long into the future where they are experiencing something different than what they're experiencing now. And so you might have seen this kind of introduced on websites like, imagine this, dot, dot, dot. You don't have to tee it up that way. You're essentially just inviting them to dream with you a little bit. And so I would, in your copy bank, as soon as you can, create a dedicated place to do this and just ask yourself, like, what would feel different? Like moving through their day, you can take it's like start in the morning and you can kind of do the reverse of whatever you're hearing most from couples early on. Like, what is making the day difficult? Morning, afternoon, meal times, evening, bedtime. And create this picture, this alternative picture of what is possible for them. And then follow that up with some very clear, direct, and dare we say it, self-promotional copy that says, like, it's not a gamble working with you. I mean, of course it always is, but people who work with you experience all of this and more. And then you can move into learning about your services. You can link over to your services page. You can shift from that. Maybe the call to action then is to book a consultation call with you, and we can talk about what you want to make happen in your relationship or whatever it might be. Is that helpful? Let me know. Let's see. Smadar says, I don't disclose online why I became a therapist. Okay. I don't give my history, but I work excluding with complex trauma and have this background as well. And yes, you got my name right. Thank you. Okay. Okay. Exclusively. No worries about the typos, Smadar. I make them all the time, so I can sift through that. I get exactly what you're saying. Yeah, you sharing your own personal history as it relates to the work you do, whatever the work you do is not a necessary ingredient in um, in conveying openness on your website. That is one way that some business owners choose to break down some barriers, disarm the people that are landing on their sites, maybe destigmatize the work that they do. And that can be, when done skillfully and thoughtfully and in a way that feels good to the provider, that can be a lovely way to do that. It's by no means the only way. So, alternatives that I have seen, Smadar, because you're a therapist, alternatives that I specifically have seen therapists do really, really well to this end are creating a values page that shares their core values as it relates to their work, or even or a mission statement for their practice. What this is going to do is convey kind of where you stand on this topic. And it's also going to communicate some key meaningful pieces to the people coming to your site about like what's baked right into who you are. And you never have to disclose your story. These are just your values, and that still carries quite a bit of oomph. So that's one way. Another way, and a lot of this comes down to your writing style, like just your natural communication style. And I don't know yours just from the exchange we're having here, Smadar, but um, you could create content that fills in some gaps. So some therapists will do a dedicated post, a blog post or a social media post that's like a peek behind the curtain, like fly on the wall view of what it's like to be in a session with me. And of course, you're not disclosing any confidential information about specific people you've worked with, but you're demystifying the process for them. That is another way that you can allow clients to feel like you get them, because you're not only giving them a taste of what it's like to work with you, which is helpful, you're also conveying to them, again, at another level, you get that they want to know what it's like to work with you. Does that make sense? So, with everything we're doing on our site, we're trying to send them meaningful signals of information, but we're also, in sending those signals, communicating that we care enough to do that. Like, we get that that's a question they have, and so we're attempting to fill in that gap for them. Something else you can do, again, back to the writing style. I've worked with therapists before who are a little bit like, they like taking kind of a sassy tone sometimes. Always very professional, but we'll take the opportunity to call out some kind of either something egregious happening in the world, or something that they have witnessed in their work, like in the field more broadly, and they'll call it out in a really helpful way that communicates like, this is not okay. Here's why I, in my work, am trying to provide an alternative. I'm trying to work toward a different future. Join me. I'd love to work with you. These are things that, without, again, centering your own story and your own journey to the work that you do, you're still conveying something of substance to people that can have that intended effect of inviting them in to reach out to you. Let me know. Let me know how this is landing, Smadar. Let's see. I want my clients to know they can heal from complex trauma and attachment trauma. Reasons I know they can heal is from my lived experience and my experience with clients over the years. Yeah. You know, I never want to oversimplify. We never want to make assumptions about how much research or how much like practical digging our people have done on their own to find a solution to their problems. But I do think sometimes because we're so immersed in the work that we do, we overlook the obvious, like the simple fact that people heal from complex trauma, I think would surprise many people. Do you agree? I think many members of the public probably have, even if they're not fully aware of it, have the belief that like there's no bouncing back in a positive way from complex trauma. I think finding ways to simply communicate like, guess what? There is a whole life possible for you. There's more possible for you than maybe your brain can even hold space for right now. And I'm here to partner with you in in discovering what that's going to look like for you. I think that is a service in and of itself. And something else, no one's asked this question, but I'm going to just shoehorn this in anyway. I firmly believe that one of the most ethical and empathic things we can do on our websites, this is all websites, but especially in the therapy world, is to give everyone who lands there, whether they end up working out with us or not, a positive experience of our field. And for some people, a corrective experience of our field. Again, we don't know where people are coming from. We don't know what they've experienced, what maybe their past therapy experiences have been. Letting them know that hope is possible, even if you're not the one that they work with, even if they're not ready to work with anyone right now. I think that's not nothing. That's still something really substantive to take away from visiting a website. So just a little encouragement to you that those things that you take probably totally for granted in your work, whether they're tips and tools or just a belief, a truth like that, that is life-changing light bulb information to many of the people who are landing on your sites. So be encouraged by that. Other questions? I so appreciate these. I think I went through all the ones that people sent ahead of time. I just want to make sure. I don't want to miss anyone. I think that was everyone. Okay. If there aren't new questions, I'm going to leave you with a little mini forecast of what's to come. So, depending on when you joined the call, you might not have heard me say this. I'm feeling a little under the weather. That's why I'm here with all my supplies. That's why I'm sounding like this. But so far, so good. I think we've done okay under the circumstances. But to rest my voice, I'm gonna give you just a shortened, chatty preview of what's coming next, rather than moving into a full show and tell with slides and everything as I'd planned to do. And instead, what I'm going to do is follow up over email and share kind of a choose your own adventure approach to where to go from here. As I shared this inside the group, and I'll summarize later. The copy bank challenge itself is going to remain active and open for the next week. So what that means is the platform, me inside the platform answering your questions, and the videos. You'll have access to that for the next week. The template is yours to save and use forever if you like. If you've only looked at the template and you've not yet saved a copy for yourself, you will want to go in and save a copy for yourself in the next week so that you have that to use. That's what's going to allow you to modify it and make it your own. So that is available to you for this next week. From here, I have been doing just a lot of planning and thinking about the copy bank. And I have shifted over the years from talking about it as a really great starting place, my top recommended starting place with whatever you're writing, start with a copy bank, to really making the offers that I make available to you reflect that, right? Like I said, our online presence matching our real life practice. I want the copy bank to be central, baked right into absolutely every way I'm available to help you. And so that's what we're going to do soon, like coming very, very soon, over the next quarter. I'm going to be introducing a series of one-off workshops diving into particular topics using the copy bank. So one example, our question today about professional profiles online. We do a workshop much like this, and then a replay after the fact showing you like, here is how I would pull from your copy bank. These are the pieces I would pull. Here's what I'd search for in the first place, and then where to plug them in and work with that to make a really just super effective online professional profile. That's one. We do the same with media pitching, for example, or setting up a speaking page. So topics that maybe aren't captured in courses you've taken or even in this challenge, and you want to dive deeper, I'm going to start making those available to you, because not everything needs to be a course and not everything can be captured in a single blog post or YouTube video. So I'm really excited about that. That's also part of why I was testing out this live stream, is to make sure it works. I'm also going to be updating my self-paced courses. So my DIY website copy course and podcast pitching course, to really infuse every single lesson with copy bank specific guidance. So how to use your copy bank to plan, draft, and send super effective podcast pitches, for example. How to use your copy bank not just to prepare for your website copy, but to actually work through every single lesson of that course. So both those courses will be getting an injection of copy bank goodness. And then finally, I will be sharing very soon with you, like when I send out this replay, a brand new one-on-one offer that I have put together. And I'm just like, I'm beaming because I couldn't be more excited to tell you about this. And I'm curious if anyone has a guess about what it might be. Let me know if you do. It is very, very connected to this challenge we've just done. That's your only hint. Let's see. Jeff says, this has been so incredibly helpful. Your enthusiasm is contagious. Oh, Jeff, on that note, I think does anyone watch Seinfeld? It's like the George Costanza. That's it for me. I think we're going to wrap up here, and I'm going to leave you in just the teensiest bit of suspense about the one-on-one offer. But it is everything you found in the Copy Bank Challenge and then some, I'll tell you that much. Ooh, good guess, Megan. We'll see. We'll see. Is this bad? This is terrible to leave you hanging like this. Thank you so much for being here. I have had a ball with you. And thank you for rolling with my froggy voice and my runny nose. I think we've made the best of this. And I appreciate your questions so, so much. So I will see you on email. And any follow-up questions, you know where to find me. But thanks so much, everyone, and have a wonderful weekend. Bye.